Hello all, Pastor Rus here. Thanks for joining me on Pastor Rus Says. Here's this week's sermon. Welcome to you all. Wonderful to see you here this Sunday. Now, as you all know, I've been looking at the scriptures over sort of the span of time. Yes, there we go. There we are. We need that. And one of the things that has sort of jumped out at us over this last year is that there are themes to the passages that they put together for the lectionary. As we move through the season of May, and I'm reading the scriptures, I realize that there's this consistent theme. See, Jesus and his disciples had this incredible ministry, but really, in all honesty, it's such a small fragment of Jesus' life. We know how he was born. We know the circumstances around his birth. We know that he went into hiding to avoid being killed by the merciless king of the time when he was a very, very small child. And then we know almost nothing about Jesus until he's about 30 years old. And then we just have this very small slice of his life, just a few years, where Jesus does ministry. And that's a majority of what we know about him. And almost all of Jesus' ministry happens in a section of Israel called Galilee. It's the section of the country that surrounds the Sea of Galilee. Jesus, he traveled with his disciples all around this area. They spoke in different cities and villages, towns and synagogues. And only on rare occasion did Jesus go into the big city of Jerusalem. But it was always with the understanding that eventually Jesus' ministry would find its way to its absolute conclusion and apex in the city of Jerusalem. And at the very last, Jesus and his disciples made the journey together to the city of Jerusalem. There was this grand entrance where they said, "Hosanna in the highest," and put leaves on the ground and coats on the ground, and Jesus rode in on a donkey. We know that he, over that next week, was betrayed, died, and then 3 days later rose again to promise to each and every one of us who are in him that we too will live again. This is the gift of Easter. But what happens after that's fascinating. Jesus says to his disciples through some messengers, "I'm going to ascend to my Father, and I want you to come and be part of this journey with me, but I'm not doing it here in Jerusalem. I want to go home. I want to go back to Galilee, where I'm from. So that's where we're going to meet. That's where we're going to journey." And in this period of time, something incredible happens to the disciples. The disciples go from this group of men who were always unsure of what it was that Jesus was saying, always unsure of what it was that they were going to do with or for Jesus, even to the point that during Jesus' final hours, his greatest supporter, his strongest disciple, denied that he even knew him 3 times. But then, between Easter and Pentecost, Jesus and the disciples go on this journey, and it changes them. So much so that on Pentecost Day, when they are finally changed into the most courageous preachers of the gospel, they're willing to walk around the cities of Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets, and preach Jesus Christ to the top of their lungs, even knowing that people are searching to kill them. So what happened on the journey? Well, that's what I want to talk to you all about for the next few weeks. How we go on this journey, how we go on a journey together with Christ. Now, as you read today in our lesson from the book of Acts, when the disciples did gather at church together, it had this really neat character. They sold everything they owned. They lived together communally. They had everything in common. They ate together. They slept together. They drank together. They worked together. They held their money together. It was just this big trip that everybody was on. The longer I think about it, the more I realize that it really bears a tremendous amount in common with a family vacation. You know, I don't know if you guys are big family vacationers. In my household, we are. There is something or other about stripping away all of life's requirements and all of life's demands, just squishing everybody into one vehicle and making a big road trip. We did this a lot when I was a kid. There were a lot of us kids, and so squishing us all into the same VW minibus was always a challenge. And then it was a pop-top camper minivan, so we slept in it together. That was even more of a challenge. I remember part of my unique challenge in it all was that I got the front seat. That was where I got to sleep. So we had this big cooler that went between the two bucket seats in the front. And I'd put a pillow on top of the cooler, then I'd lay across the two front bucket seats and the pillow. And that was my bed in the camper when I was a kid. And I got to tell you, even for a little kid, and they can sleep anywhere, that was not the most comfortable bed that has ever been slept on in the history of beds. But that's what we did. We all sort of set all of life aside and just went and did this thing together. Now, I didn't appreciate, I guess, so much what my family was doing when I was a kid. Because when you're a kid, you just sort of see all the fun stuff. And, you see all the cool things that you get to do. You don't see the work that goes behind it. When I was younger, traveling basically meant the day that I went to travel, when I was single and didn't have kids, traveling meant when the day came for me to travel, I threw everything in a bag and I left. No big deal. I remember when I was in college, we would go on this campus trip every year to the beach. It was our campus ministry team, and we would get all of the people from our ministry group together. And there were 50 or 60 of us. And we would go to Oak Island Beach in North Carolina. We rent 3 or 4 beach houses. We broke all sorts of housing codes because there was always more college students than ever should be in any one of those houses. The house would hold, if you looked at the paperwork, said, sleeps 10. We'd have 25 people in there. Because we were college students. We didn't care where we slept. We slept on couches. We slept in bathtubs. We slept on cushions on floors. We stacked people in just random places. And we were young enough, it didn't matter. And I remember packing for these trips insofar as I remember back then being prepared meant I had 2 swimsuits. That was what thinking ahead back then meant. Okay, travel is different for me now that I have 4 kids. This is what travel looks like for me now. Now, this is actually a photograph of the back of my minivan from last Christmas. My wife and I are masters at Tetris. I'm just saying right now, we can fit things into the back of a vehicle. Because you've got to have all the necessities of life when you travel with 4 kids. You've got to have the important things. Now, I don't know why some of the things are important. Like this object here with the green legs, that's an air hockey table. I'm not sure why it was a necessity. But we needed an air hockey table on that trip. It was important that we had air hockey with us. I don't know why it was. We had guitars and suitcases and, now when you got kids, you plan all this stuff ahead. Do we have enough diapers? Do we have enough wipes? Do we have enough snacks? Snacks are important. I don't know about y'all, but when you're on the road, snacks are important. My wife is the snack quartermaster. She determines when the children have reached the point where they need distracted with food. Hey, who wants a cookie? Oh, yeah, we all want a cookie. Of course, it's gotten easier. When I was a kid, we did the family trip. We did license plate bingo and my name is Annie and any number of things that stayed busy. Nowadays, the kids watch the DVD player that our van has built in. Still, though, you have to have all that stuff planned out. Because it's not like you're traveling. It's like you're invading wherever you go. You got to have all this stuff ready. It's got to be part of the family vacation. Now, if somehow you've gotten this far in the world and you've not seen this movie, I don't know. You messed up the 80s. You didn't do it right. Family Vacation with Chevy Chase is funny because it's true. If you've ever been on the vacation where everything that could go wrong did go wrong, that happens sometimes. And as much as old Clark Griswold here just wanted to get the family together, to be together for the sake of being together, that really is what family vacations are about. You plan for all the necessities. You try to make as many allowances as you can for travel and food and snacks and packing. And do we have everybody's medication? Do we have everybody's clothes? Do we have everybody's extra underwear? Do we have everybody's all that stuff? And then there are just things that you can't prepare for. Okay, I don't know what it is, but I have 4 kids, and I think that there is some secret meeting, not held by my children, but held individually by their bladders, to guarantee that none of the bathroom stops will ever include all 4 of them, thus guaranteeing that 10 minutes down the road, one of them will then say, I gotta go to the potty. And then you're going to pull over again. Like every trip I've ever had, when MapQuest says it takes you 4.5 hours to get to your location, I add an hour and a half for bathroom breaks. I'm just like, no, that's not going to happen. I wonder if Moses had this problem. I don't know if Moses had this problem or not. I know Moses had this problem, though. Let me tell y'all what. I can almost guarantee that at some point on whatever trip I'm making, we will get to the interstate and be like 20 minutes down the interstate. One of my kids will say, almost usually Abby, by the way, I think has to take a bathroom break, will say, are we there yet? We're like, sweetie, we're like 30 minutes down the way. Your grandma's house is 3 hours away. Actually, they've moved. Now it's more like 7. And they'll say, are we there yet on the half-hour mark? No, we're not there yet. No, we're not there yet. No, we're not there yet. But here's the thing. In life, there are people who are destination people. Who are like, I just want to get there. I want to get done. I have friends that when they're making a trip, they will get up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning because they don't want to deal with traffic. And they'll get in the car at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning to go somewhere and arrive at wherever they're traveling to at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. Because they just want to get to the destination. No traffic, nobody on the road, they get it all to themselves. I'm like, I am not that dedicated to the destination. But you know what? Here's the thing. I'm also not that dedicated to the journey. So I really believe that while in life there may be journey people and there may be destination people, for me, I'm a company person. I'm in the trip for the people that I'm making it with. If I get where I'm going and in good time and I made like awesome time on the road, okay, that's great. If we saw the world's largest ball of twine on the way there and we were all like, that's the most awesome thing I've ever seen, it's great. I'm in it to spend time with the people I care about. Now, like I mentioned to the kids earlier today, in the book of Acts when they were reading through this is how the early church behaved. They knew that they were on this incredible journey, that they were going to heaven one day, that the destination was going to be amazing. They knew the journey was going to be hard. They knew they were going to be persecuted. They knew they were going to suffer. They knew that things were going to be hard. It wasn't easy for Jesus. But they knew that what was going to make it all work is if they were together, if they held on to each other together. So they ate together, they lived together, they prayed together, they worshiped together. Every year, that campus ministry group, we would rent houses. In fact, this is one of those houses we would rent. Doesn't look like a palace. It was not a palace, by the way. This was the house that we did all of our meetings in. We would have our worship service in this house. I will never forget, you see that window there? We were having communion one day. And the pastor picks up this beautiful loaf of French bread to offer the blessing. And he goes to tear the French bread, and those of us who are sitting in the front row realize what he can't. That the entire bottom of that loaf of bread is covered in mold. And he's saying, the body of Christ given for you. We're college students. We're like, how do we get his attention, It's like we're like, if people are starting to giggle a little bit in the front row, like folks are kind of trying to give him the, hey, look, no. And he just gets this weird look like, he's like, what are you guys doing? Finally, one of us was like, look under the bread. He goes, oh, they did not prepare me for that in seminary. And I remember all of these marvelous experiences we had in this building. And one of the experiences we had every year was somebody would say, and this usually happened like 3 o'clock in the morning because college students don't sleep like normal people. About 3 o'clock in the morning, we've already paid, 200-300 rounds of euchre. We've just gone as far into the night as our bodies will go. And we're in that space where we have those life conversations. And 6 or 8 of us sitting around going, if we bought one of these houses, we just pool all our money, we buy one of these houses, we could come back here and we could all be together every single summer for the rest of our lives. All we got to do is buy this one house. That's the best idea ever. Forgetting the fact that we were broke college students, so we didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. We always thought how great it would be if we could just always get everyone back together again. But here's the thing. As I've grown older, I've realized that I'm not going to go back to Oak Island, North Carolina and spend a weekend in this building. No matter how much this was a part of my life here in Oak Island, no matter how much I learned about ministry right there in that living room of that building, it doesn't look like a sanctuary. It looks like an old beach house because that's what it was. But here's the thing. I learned that the community of faith that I'm gathered together into matters. I learned that there's no such thing as a lone sheep. That we're called to be on this journey together. Every so often you hear people say, I can be a Christian anywhere. I don't have to go to church. I can worship God just as well by a stream or on a mountaintop all by myself. You know what? No, you can't. Because here's the thing. We need each other. The shepherd of the sheep gathers his flock together because we need each other. We need each other to teach each other. We need each other to serve each other. We need each other to correct each other and be corrected by each other. We need each other because our shepherd gathered us together. And shepherds figure large in the Bible. God's always talking about shepherds. Shepherds were not important back then like we think they are. The Bible's always talking about it, so we think being a shepherd must have been awesome. Let me tell you what. Being a shepherd in ancient biblical times was not awesome. So let me tell you something about sheep. And Jesus talks about this in the gospel passage today. Sheep are picky about who they follow. Now, we think sheep are just going to follow everybody, but that's not true. Sheep only follow other sheep. So how do the shepherds do it? It's pretty simple. If you want to be a shepherd, you got to be a sheep. Or at least as far as the sheep are concerned, you've got to be a sheep. You got to smell like a sheep. You got to live like a sheep. You got to sleep like a sheep. And so if you were a shepherd, your job was to hang out with the sheep all day, every day. When the scripture says the shepherd knows the sheep by name, that's because that's who the shepherd talks to all day long. And the sheep know his voice. They better know his voice because it's the only voice they hear. The sheep recognize the shepherd because the shepherd smells like them. You hear the story about the angels announcing to the shepherds in the field by night that Jesus is being born. And I think we get this image of these, young, strong, wise men coming in from the field and Jesus being born and the shepherds there. And they're important, but they weren't in society back then. They were the lowest of the low. They were like, oh, it's a shepherd. I can tell. I smell him from here. It was a terrible job. You had to love the sheep to do that job. See, God chose that for himself when he came to live amongst us. When Jesus came to live amongst us, he chose to be one of us, to smell like us, to live like us, to speak to us. Because he wanted to gather us together. Because he knew that we couldn't lead ourselves. As important it is as we do this journey together, we have to rely on each other. And that's not easy because we don't always like each other. Sometimes we don't get along with each other. Sometimes we intimidate each other. Sometimes we resist each other. Jesus says sheep don't live well that way. They have to live in community. you'll not grow. Follow the shepherd. Now, sheep are funny. Sheep have to move. They're not like cattle. Cattle, you can put cattle down in a field and they'll graze the field. And you leave them too long there, they'll overgraze it. But the way cattle are built, they don't automatically overgraze the space they're in. Sheep are different. Because the way the muzzle on a sheep is, they can get right down to the roots of a plant, right down to the ground when they eat. So when sheep eat, they're like these giant lawnmowers that just tear the grass right down to the surface of the ground. And sheep will just decimate a section of grass in no time flat. So shepherd's job is to keep the sheep moving. If the sheep stop moving, they're going to starve to death. So the shepherd's job is to live amongst them, to be one of them, but to be the guiding force that keeps them from killing themselves. And in the passage, Jesus even goes so far as to say, my sheep know me, I am the gate. No, when Jesus is saying this, he's not being figurative or artistic with his language. When Jesus is saying this to his sheep, to his people, this is how ancient sheepfolds were built. This is where the sheep went to sleep at night. You'll notice something about it. It's round. You know why it's round? It's round because sheep aren't particularly bright creatures. You give them a square place to stay, and sometimes they'll crush themselves into a corner to stay together or away from something they're scared of, and will actually kill the ones in the corner. So they build them round. But you'll notice that this particular sheepfold has a strange feature. It's got an opening right here. But where's the gate? They forget the gate when they built it. They didn't, actually. Here's the job. If you're the shepherd, once you've gotten your sheep into this enclosure, your job is to sleep right here at night. See, the shepherd wasn't figuratively the gate. The shepherd was literally the gate. And if the sheep tried to get out at nighttime, they would step on the shepherd, which is a really good alarm clock. You're like, oh, the sheep are trying to get out. They just stepped on my face. I should get up. But if somebody comes into that fold some other way other than through that gate, then they're not the shepherd. And the world's full of people that want to lead us. But they don't lead us towards life. They don't lead us towards wholeness. They don't care about being with us, being one of us, suffering with us. Only Christ does that. Only Christ leads us. Only Christ loves us. Only Christ guides us. Christ is our one true leader, our one true shepherd. And he's taking us on this journey to this incredible thing. We have to stay together. We have to stay with him. We have to listen to his voice. Because if we get lost on this path, the world is full of wolves. The world is full of those that would come and steal the sheep. But we have a shepherd that loves us, that cares for us, that gathers us together. And so I say to you all this week, as we talk about the journey through the next few weeks, ask yourself this. Are you listening for the voice of the shepherd in your life? And if you are, then know that he is gathering you together with the rest of his sheep to take you on a journey. If you're not hearing the voice of the shepherd in your life, rest assured, he is calling you. He will gather you because he came, he lived, he died, and was resurrected for you. Amen. Thank you for listening to Pastor Rus Says. We hope you subscribe on iTunes, and you can also find us at Pastor Rus Ministries on Facebook. And if you go there, you can also see our twice-a-week Bible study, preview, review, with lots of extra bonus material. We hope to see you there, and until then, God bless.